Wow. We got a cup of Joe hanging out. Hi Witchlings, welcome back to my channel. It's me, your local chaotic witch aunt. And today we are talking about folk magic, Christianity, Catholicism, and what it looks like in my practice. This is either going to be a video that really doesn't do well because not a lot of people are interested, or it's going to be a video that's seen as very controversial, which is kind of the two things that I end up seeing with content talking about Christianity and witchcraft. There's this preconceived notion on the internet in witchcraft circles that Christianity and witchcraft do not mix. And I think that's because of the things that of the fact that, you know, Christianity had a big hand in those anti-witchcraft laws and a lot of the witch trials, as well as ending up with persecuting people of color, Jewish individuals, indigenous spirituality for the sake of witchcraft. But witchcraft and Christianity do have a history together. Maybe not the witchcraft as you think of it in our modern day and age, but you know, it is there. So a few things that we need to mention before getting into this video. When we talk about witchcraft historically, that word wasn't used, especially in terms of folk magic. Nowadays, I identify as a witch and I am a folk practitioner. I practice folk magic, but my ancestors and my great-grandma and my nana never would have called it witchcraft. They would have said, no, witchcraft is for the devil. And that's the thing, and that's a heavily ingrained thing that has gone on for generations, because those who were witches were either evil casters, evil witches who casted bad magic on other people, and then the folk practitioners, the Fahrun, healed them, or you said you were a witch and you were persecuted. So it wasn't called witchcraft. It was just the things we do. Just the things we do. In my province of southern Italy, where my ancestors are from, where my great-grandma immigrated from, there was a lot of folk magic. Everyone did it. Everyone knew about it. Other regions, you know, there may not be as much. There may be more of a influence of the Catholic Church, and yeah. So kind of where do we begin? We begin at the beginning. How did folk magic and Christianity come together? Here's the deal. So before folk magic, before Christianity, there was paganism, and before paganism, that's my cat. Before paganism, there were folk practices. There were people who knew how to use herbs to heal ailments. There were people who developed, you know, spiritual and medicinal cures. These folk practices, I can assure you, have been around longer than anything we know of. And they just kept changing and morphing and being passed down. There are a few sects of folk magic, a lot of different types of folk magic. Most, if not all, folk magics are syncretized or have a lot of Christianity, Christian imagery, and Christian tools in them. For example, we think of brujeria. Not everyone who practices brujeria, you know, uses those Catholic or Christian tools, and that's fine. In the same way that not everyone who practices Italian folk magic uses those Catholic and Christian tools, which is fine. It really is up to the choice of the folk practitioner whether or not they want to include those kind of that syncretization from Christianity and Catholicism, depending on, you know, what they feel. For me personally, I have, because my most recent ancestors were Catholic, and it's a way of honoring them, as well as most of the information you find on Italian folk magic is Catholic and Christian. You will not find any anthropological texts that really kind of go in depth with cures without a prayer being used. Without some kind of remnant of Christianity or the Catholic Church, some level of it in it. Because of that, I made the choice at the beginning of my Italian folk magic practice to include it in my practice. And so I work with saints. I work with one archangel, I venerate the saints, I petition them. I do the same with the archangels. And a lot of people say, Frankie, how can you even work with Catholic tools if you're a pagan? Here's my answer. And not everyone may agree with this, not everyone's gonna have the same belief set as me, and that's fine. But you should know that a lot of folk practitioners work within similar or the same framework. I am not a Christian, I'm not a Catholic. I believe that God exists, but I don't worship him as part of my religion. What I do is look at the spirits within Catholicism as spirits. The saints are people who have passed on. They are people who did miraculous things and died and can do miraculous things past death. The archangels are just that, archangels. I see the saints, the archangels, as spirits who I can venerate, who I can include in my practice, and who can help me in my practice. I do use Catholic methods to communicate with them. I don't usually pull a tarot card reading to talk with Saint Expedite. I will use, a novena, a 9-day prayer. I will use a candle for him. Kind of the more traditional methods of communing with saints and kind of getting that petition across. You can do spells that incorporate those things, incorporate novenas, and I will talk a little more about that in a little bit. But for me, there's still a heavy amount of respect that is going into my working with these spirits and these beings. Just because I don't follow the religion doesn't mean that I don't respect them and I don't honor them. Just because I'm not Christian doesn't mean I don't respect the Catholic or Christian God. A lot of saints have over time almost become like part of so many traditions and things that are separate from Christianity. Folk saints are usually really important to people, culture, places, but are they like actually saints according to Catholicism? No. We have Santeria, which is a whole practice based off the saints, a whole religion based off the saints. Initiation only, by the way. And within that, we kind of, see other things where the saints kind of come out of Catholicism a little bit and not necessarily have a mind of their own, but you will find the saints in a lot of different places, especially in folk magic, that with people who aren't Catholic or Christian. Hoodoo uses the saints. I am unsure about German folk magic, Italian folk magic 100%, unsure about Appalachian folk magic. But when people kind of ask me these questions about how is this possible, how do you do this, I almost don't have a well-equipped answer, because for me it feels like second nature. I have found my practice that I am supposed to be practicing, and to me it feels so right and so correct that I don't know how to explain it to someone who has questions. Like, I don't know how to explain that this just feels normal to me. Like, using prayer and spells feels so normal. I use different prayers to bless things. Does that make me any less devoted to my goddess? No. Those saints aren't for worship, they are for veneration. Worship and veneration are very different. And within that, and within the kind of community of Italian folk practitioners that I know of, almost all of us have a kind of blend of Catholicism and Catholic folk magic ideas and paganism. The very specific kind of fully Catholic, very Catholic folk practice of Italian folk magic is benedicaria. The book I recommend for that is The Things We Do. It is, very Catholic, but it's there. And then within that, for kind of Catholic influence with a little bit of pagan influence, I recommend Italian Folk Magic by Ruta's Kitchen Witchery. She discusses not only saints and Madonnas, but ancestors and working with the pagan goddess. And then my all-time favorite book is Italian Magic: Secret Lives of Women, which it starts off with kind of talking about goddess worship in Italy and what that looked like, and how that kind of transferred down into the way the women practiced folk magic and were healers. There is history and anthropological texts of male healers. And also it's not something that just women can do. But historically speaking, Italian folk magic was primarily done by women because men could go out and do the job, women were doing the healing. It was their source of power. But Italian folk magic breaks down all of these kind of remedies and the different ways that we do it, and we can see some of the Catholic ideologies that were kind of syncretized within the folk practices. A lot of folk practices survived by flying under the radar of Catholicism, of using the prayers, of saying the Psalms, praying to saints, doing all of these things because otherwise they would be called witches. And ask any folk practitioner, any kind of elder, folk healer, they are a good Catholic. They're a good Catholic. They don't do witchcraft. Witchcraft is the bad women who use jealousy on people. They are healers and they are good Catholics, good Catholic women. We are hitting a generation in folk magic in which there are a lot of us reconnecting with heritage and reconnecting with ancestors that we lost in the immigration in the assimilation to America, like me. And a lot of us in Italy practicing the folk practices. And a lot of times what ends up happening is a blend of traditional practices and something new. And for me, that looks like a blend of a lot of traditional kind of folk medicines and modern day witchcraft. And I don't know what else to say. I guess I'll talk about examples now. When people ask me how, Christianity and witchcraft can be together, it tends to come from kind of two narratives. It's either Christians who really don't like the idea of witchcraft being anywhere near Catholicism because it's against the Bible, one. Two, or it's witches who really don't think that based on the history of Christianity and Catholicism, witchcraft, any witch should call themselves or be Christian or Catholic. Both of these individuals are, in my opinion, sticking their nose where it doesn't belong. And I know that sounds mean, but we're well aware that Christians and Catholics really don't like witches. Not all of them, but a lot of times, they don't, without looking at the history of how it's been intertwined. And the word witch is new. There's a new reclamation of it. It's becoming, more popular. Historically, we wouldn't see that word being used for people who did folk practices. So now that it's being used, people are kind of on the defense. Two, I'm not concerns. I don't think that any witch who is not well-versed, or I don't think any witch who's not a Christian or Catholic witch should give Christian or Catholic witches their opinion on whether or not they should be a Christian or Catholic witch. You know how we interpret mythology? A lot, and there's UPGs everywhere and so many different interpretations. That's basically the Bible. It got reinterpreted so many times that we have to look back to see what it actually meant, and it was written by men, like mythology. So referencing the Bible, which is what I see a lot of, which is referencing the Bible and sections in the Bible saying this part of the Bible says witchcraft is bad, you can't be a witch because of that. You can't be a Catholic and Christian witch. Why must they follow their religious text to a T? And I'm aware that some Christian and Catholic individuals do that. That doesn't mean it's okay. But like us with our mythology, we don't follow it to a T. We keep our relationship between us and the gods and use the mythology as an outer source. So what is different about Christian or Catholic witches doing that? Their relationship with witchcraft is with their God and how they practice it. That's just my opinion. So now I'm going to talk about, a little bit about the Catholic tools that I use in my practice and what it looks like when I use them. So here we go. I'm going to be gathering some things. I do have things that I do not show. Things are falling. I have things that I don't show on camera, and that's very specifically because they have asked me not to show them on camera. And I'm also grabbing some book recommendations for y'all, specifically around Italian folk magic, but obviously reading them does kind of help. Things are gonna fall. Things are gonna fall. Please, 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 please stay up. Okay. son of a stack of books. Grab 2 more. I have actually 3 more, excuse me. I have a lot of books that I've read over the course of maybe 2 years. So, you guys are getting a lot today. So these are my Italian folk magic and folk magic recommendations. So we're starting off with Catholic tools I use in my practice. One of the biggest tools I use is the rosary. Most of my rosaries are in here. I have several. This is my favorite one that was made for me for my birthday. So rosaries are used in a lot of different things. There's a book called The Way of the Rose that is like absolutely wonderful, talking about connecting with the divine feminine or the divine receptive within the rose. I'm not done with it yet, but I do recommend it as a book for talking about the rosary. I pray the rosary to connect with Queen of Heaven, Saint Mary, the Virgin Mother, who is one of, next to Diana, probably one of the most honored saints in my practice. And I do have a kind of section in my Diana video where I talk about kind of my ideas of Saint Mary and Diana being very similar or the same. Kind of 2 sides of the same coin for me. This is another rosary I have. A lot of these times, this rosary is held while I am praying or doing a novena. They are used to actually pray the rosary as a form of protection, to connect with Saint Mary. This is one that I got from my mother. I don't typically wear them, but I do use them as protection. Praying is one of the biggest parts and one of the biggest things that I use within my practice. This is my treasury of novenas. Within it, I have some saint cards. This is Saint Rita with a prayer on the back, Saint Michael the Archangel, prayer on the back, and Saint Peter, a prayer on the back. So within this kind of novena, I also have a copy of the Raccolta, which also does a lot of prayers. Novenas are used for me in tangent to typically 7 or 9 day spells. Sometimes I will do a novena by itself. There are saints that I've done novenas for that on the first day, they helped me out and gave me what I asked for. These are the 2 candles I have for the 2 kind of saints that I honor in my practice. We have Saint Michael the Archangel and Saint Mary, both of which are some of my absolute favorite individuals. This is kind of veneration for them. I also use a lot of holy water. Holy water, 10 out of 10. I love fucking holy water. The most thing that I use is I will often pair specific prayers to specific saints with spells. I will also do specific novenas to specific saints with spells. I will get candles for them if I need to. A lot of the time, the prayer is the biggest part. And when you look historically, kind of anthropologically wise, and I have 2 books here for anthropology that I recommend for Italian folk magic, Fahrun Magic in Italy and Magic, a Theory from the South. When you look at these, a lot of the remedies, the folk practices are kind of like a little witchy and like superstitious, but they have Catholic or Christian prayers with them. And that's kind of the section that I focus on. So yeah, it talks about pagan Catholic syncretism of spells within here, and a lot of these are spells that are really, really great within Magic and Theory from the South. There are less kind of full prayers in here. I did get some binding remedies, different kind of chants, spells, prayers, etc. that are said during specific healing practices, so unbindings or binding remedies, because the thing is, most of these are just their remedies for a bunch of different things. So you look in here and you find a remedy for, you know, Fatiuchiere, for Jetitora, which is like evil magic. You find a remedy for unbinding. You find a remedy for il Malocchio. More in-depth remedy information can be found in Italian Magic, Secret Lives of Women. This is one of my most used sources, talking about all these different sections, usually with drawings and or pictures. You can tell it's very used. This is one of the biggest resources that I've had in my practice, talking about formulas, prayers, materials, tools, different ideas, superstitions, different plants, different apotropaic plants. all these wonderful things. Food magic, like everything is in here. And the reason I recommend this is because the author spent like 5 years going to Italy every single summer and doing in-person, for like first-person interviews with all of these healers. So this is straight from the horse's mouth. One of my favorite ones. I can never get enough of it. Furthermore, we're moving into kind of looser, less heavy text. The things we do, the ways of the Holy Benedette. This is Benedicaria, but it has some really great prayers in here that you can use, like prayers for the saints, appendixes. He does kind of shit on neo-pagans and stregoneria in here, so keep that in mind because he is Catholic. Italian witchcraft, like he has a whole thing where he says, what is Italian witchcraft? Why I don't agree with it. He does kind of talk about Gramassi a little bit. Yeah, and that kind of movement. And when he says stregoneria or Italian witchcraft, he kind of doesn't necessarily say like actual Italian witches. He's talking more about Gramassi and Leland's Ardea and the Italian-American Reconstructionist history of witchcraft. Well, and the Italian-American Reconstructionist thing. So Strighe is in here. I identify as a Striga or Strighe, but my thing is I also am using traditional folk practices and I'm not necessarily following Gramassi's model for Italian-American Reconstructionist witchcraft. Striga is also a good one. So there are a lot of things in here. There's like cure for worms, or ivermi, which is usually worms, is kind of, consider it like less of a possession and more of like a spiritual worm, like something kind of got in you, so you got to get it out. Prayers to Saint Rita, a curative bath to cure a headache, bronchitis. Some of these are very traditional. There are levels of we can't do 100% the traditional methods because you're not going to treat temporary paralysis the same way that rural healers in Italy did, if that makes sense. Next one, Italian folk magic, Rue's Kitchen Witchery. I recommend starting with this. This is very light, talks about saints, ancestors, angels. I believe in here it also talks about pagan deities, talks about Saint Anthony of Padua, Madonna, Roman deities are in here. Elemental spirits, does mention fairies. Fairies are different in the Italian kind of folk magic area than others, but this was my first book on Italian folk magic, very helpful, talks about superstitions. The author of Italian folk magic is from Naples, so please note that if you are not from Naples or you're from a different region, it is going to be different for you. Other books I recommend, Magical Power of the Saints by Reverend Ray T. Malborough. This has more of a hoodoo lens on it, so keep that in mind, but it does give you some good information on the saints in terms of prayers as well as candle magic. Sister Carol's book of spells, blessings, and folk magic, one of my all-time favorite books. Here she is. So many different spells in here, so many different blessings, and also a nice little conversation about folk magic. Honoring Your Ancestors, Guide to Ancestral Veneration by Mallory Valdez. This gonna help you. It's gonna help you because ancestor work is a big part. This is another basically kind of anthropology text from Kessinger's rare reprints that I haven't started yet. Vestiges of Ancient Manners and Customs discoverable in modern Italy and Sicily. It looks like this. Haven't started it yet, can't give a full review, but I've given you my absolute favorites. The big thing to keep in mind with folk magic is that my opinion is that it is very difficult to remove the elements of Christianity and Catholicism from folk magic. You can choose to omit them, but it's going to be difficult for you to find a source that doesn't include it. Like me, kind of you can substitute things for pagan prayer. You can substitute things for your own chants. I personally use as much of the traditional material I can find because for me it is the most reliable. It is the one that works. There is power behind Catholic prayer. There is power behind Catholic tools. And to me, that is something that is difficult to disagree with because think of how many people believe in Christianity. How many people worship the Christian God? How many people put their faith in the saints, in the Our Father prayer, the Lord's Prayer, and the Hail Mary? Those prayers have power without believing or praying to the God. they just have so much in them. So much energy has been collected by them, and that is why I use them, because to me they are so powerful. Do I completely omit pagan prayer and pagan rituals? No. I usually keep them separate though. Another recommendation, if you do choose to go down this path, you're gonna have to know what region your family was from. Different practices and different regions, especially in Italy, are going to have very different methods of doing things. Same with anywhere. And this is specific to, you know, my experience with Italian folk magic. It is difficult to nail down things without knowing at least the region, like Calabria, where you're from. For me, I think I'm Lucania and Calabria. Lucania doesn't exist anymore, but for some reason Cosenza was like a part of Lucania, like on the edge, like part of it, not even all of it, part of it was part of Lucania, and then Lucania disappeared, now it's Calabria. So I researched both. But you can look up and trace kind of the ancient peoples you were descended from, the regions, the kingdoms you were a part of, and go from there. A lot of towns have very differing methods and different healing structures. But yeah, and then furthermore, I know people who are connecting with like German folk magic, Irish folk magic, which is also heavily syncretized with Catholicism, all of these kind of methods, and everyone has a different way of reconciling with the syncretization and the assimilation into the Catholic and Christian Church, while also connecting and reconnecting with the ancient folk magic that existed before then. Overall, yeah. These are all my resources that I have provided for you today, re folk magic and Christianity. I think that's all I have for you guys today. My camera is like about to die, so we're gonna just have to call it here. I would love to do more videos on this topic if people are interested, if people want to know. But yeah, I'm gonna go do some blessing of objects. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching. If you want, you can like, subscribe, turn the bell on, leave a comment, but no pressure. Remember to drink water and enjoy the rest of your day. Sa benedica.